Let's bring in MPs to respond to the news and lots more. Liberal MP Greg Fergus joins us. He's, by the way, also the chair of the Parliamentary Black Caucus. And I should mention, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that today the Prime Minister announced a $221 million program to support Black entrepreneurs in Canada. That will take place over 4 years. We're also joined by Conservative MP and the Caucus Party Liaison, that's his new title, Tim Uppal, and the NDP MP and Party Whip, Rachel Blaney. Good to have all of you. Mr. Fergus, we might have talked about your program today, but this news has unfortunately overtaken it. I think it's still very important.
It was really good news.
Yeah, and I hope we can circle back, but does your government take responsibility for the closure of 25 years of charitable activities by the We Charity in Canada by essentially mismanaging the summer student volunteer program?
You know, Mr. Solomon, or dare I say Evan, you know, this has been a really tough situation. I mean, with the pandemic, with the situation that everyone was in, where we were trying to bring out aid to Canadians who found themselves, through no fault of their own, dealing with the consequences of the pandemic, of the health crisis. We were able to reach out to regular Canadians, regular workers. We want to reach out to students. It's really sad to see We Charity close up shop in Canada and the U.K. They've done great work. They reached out, as I think SNC-Lavalin mentioned, to over 1 million Canadian kids. I'm just glad that they're able to continue their activities, perhaps through this endowment, what they're doing overseas, and making sure that they're reaching the people who need it the most.
But let me press you back on that. Does your government take responsibility that it was contacting this charity, the confusion about it, the fact that the Prime Minister and the former Finance Minister did not recuse themselves? That created the controversy. That created the Ethics Commission, the Finance Committee's investigation. That destroyed the charity. Is the government responsible for that?
I'm not certain if the government is responsible for that. I know that there was a lot of undue attention which was brought to this issue, trying to seek out connections, perhaps where there were none. But look, that will be investigated. That will be examined over time. So I really can't comment on that. But all I could really do is just say, everyone had great intentions on trying to reach out and bring about very quickly emergency benefits to students, to young people, and to also give them much needed experience, a work experience during this pandemic. It's sad to see it go.
Mr. Uppal, what does it tell you that today, as Lisa LaFemme just told us, the We Charity is shutting down operations in Canada? What does it tell you, sir?
It tells me that there's a lot more to this story. I think, there's direct links between this government, Justin Trudeau, and We Charity. This is a charity that's absolutely embroiled in Justin Trudeau's scandal here. As we know, right, it's a $500 million contract, sole source contract to the charity. This is the same charity that was paying Justin Trudeau's mother, brother. Finance Minister was getting free trips out of this. And the important thing now is that if this charity is going under, we need to make sure that those documents that Parliament has requested are preserved. We already have Justin Trudeau that shut down Parliament just to shut down the committees that were investigating this situation. Now we want to make sure that the documents requested that we need to look into this further, are not destroyed. Those documents must be preserved. We need those documents.
All right. By the way, it's not a sole source contract. I know this sounds like splitting hairs, but it is a contribution agreement. I just want to make sure we're factually accurate. But Rachel Blaney, what does it tell you that in the midst of even the Kielburgers call it the We scandal, they've had to shutter their business in Canada?
Well, I have to say that Canadians all know the We scandal, and that is the legacy that the Liberal government has provided for this charity. You know, it's very interesting to listen to my Liberal friend here speak about, the best intentions, and we wanted to provide support for students. And those are all things that I think majority of Canadians can get behind. But the reality is this whole agreement was riddled with scandal. It was one thing after another. And the facts are that the government prorogued so that they would not have to be accountable to Canadians through committees about this. So the investigations continue. They have silenced us during this time, but that will not stop, and Canadians want to know what happened, especially when you see documents with line after line blacked out. I mean, Canadians deserve a better answer than what the Liberals are giving, and talking about supporting students is not the answer that they're looking for.
let me just stay with you quickly. Do you buy, the Kielburgers told Lisa LaFlamme they were politically naive, and they say still this was put forward by the bureaucracy, not by Minister Bardish Chagger. Do you buy that, Rachel Blaney?
Well, I think more importantly, Canadians are not buying that because there is just so much confusion, so many different issues coming out. And this is something that, I'm sad to see that valuable resource go. But there has to be accountability on all levels, and especially the Liberal government, for setting up a situation where this is the outcome of it and where Canadians are asking more and more questions every day.
Mr. Uppal, what about you? When the Kielburgers said, look, we are naive. We didn't see the political freight train coming. And this was all from the bureaucrats. It was really this bureaucrat named Rachel Wernick's idea. It was not Bardish Chagger, was not our idea. Do you buy that?
Not at all, and the emails that have been come up since show some of that, and there's a lot more documents that are blacked out that I think we need to take a look at. But what's clear here is an organization that is very close to the Prime Minister's family, that was under financial distress before, and then a massive contract is provided, and that could have actually probably provided a significant amount of money, so possibly saved the organization. That contract has been canceled, that agreement has been canceled, and now the organization is going under. So I think there's a scenario here, and I don't think anybody believes the Kielburgers on this, and they also don't believe the Liberals either. What happened here is that Justin Trudeau and his ministers provided a contract to this organization, and one that it was just riddled with conflict of interest here.
Mr. Fergus, last question. Go ahead, Mr. Fergus.
Mr. Solomon, what's really just interesting listening to that particular last answer and the last two answers is, in a sense, they won't take the word of our excellent public service. They won't take the words of the people who had organized this event and now have to wind it down. And the fact is, they're trying to bend the reality to fit the pre-established narrative that they have.
The speculation.
And that is not the case. And it's unfortunate because now we're seeing.
Sorry, guys, I can't hear you all, but Mr. Fergus, I think the opposition is going to say it's not trusting. There are literally documents that came out, I've read them, that are pretty clear that Craig Kielburger wrote saying, thank you for your suggestion to Bardish Chagger on April 17th. So the documents the opposition believes stand in stark contrast to either the Kielburger's testimony or your own government minister like Bardish Chagger's. How do you reconcile that difference?
Well, I'll honestly say this, I actually haven't read that document, so forgive me for not being able to speak to that in particular. But I guess the point is that I'm trying to make is that people were working under very tight deadlines to try to come up with a program that would meet the needs for Canadian youth and for Canadian students. And, it seems to me that if you want to believe that there is a conspiracy that goes even into our public service, well, I don't believe that. We have an excellent professional public service, frankly, the finest in the world. And I just don't like this idea that people are creating this whole narrative out of whole cloth.
Mr. Uppal wants to respond, sir. Go ahead.
Again, just like you said, Evan, that's not who we're blaming. It's not the public service. It is the Liberal cabinet ministers who directed this. It's quite clear from the emails. And you know what? There's more documents to be read. There's more documents that we have that we're hoping that now, even though they're going under, we still get those documents. But even the documents that were provided, so many of them are redacted. Unredact them. Let us take a look at the whole thing. If the Liberals have nothing to hide, then unredact those documents and let Canadians see everything. Then maybe we could take a look about what we believe and what we don't believe.
And Evan, if I may,
just before we go, go ahead, Ms. Blaney.
I just want to say that this is not about the public service. The reality is across this country, we have many youth-oriented organizations that have contribution agreements with the federal government. Please do not tell me that they did not look at alternate responses to this. And the fact that everything has been redacted in that information, and even with that, we can see that something sketchy was going on. Let's be accountable and let's stop blaming the public servants, which I believe is what the Liberal government is doing.
Absolutely.
Guys, before we go, I just want to bring in Mr. Fergus really, really quickly. I just want to give you a moment because I thought it was a very important announcement today, given this is not a nonpartisan moment, but there's $221 million for an entrepreneurship program for Black Canadians. I think you've worked hard on this with territorial leaders and provincial leaders of all political parties across the country. Just can you give us a little detail of what exactly it is?
look, this is an opportunity for Black Canadians, Black entrepreneurs to overcome the systemic discrimination that they'd faced over time, especially on economic matters. This is a way for the Black Canadians to create economic prosperity, not only for themselves, but for all Canadians. It's a way for us to see ourselves differently, for a way for Canadians to see us differently, and for us to contribute to our great country, Canada. And I'm pleased to say that this was developed in a nonpartisan way with the support from more than half of parliamentarians in the House and the Senate. And I'm really glad to see that this is another step along the way to addressing the issues that we had raised a couple of months ago.
All right, I appreciate you talking about that. Mr. Fergus, Ms. Blaney, and Mr. Uppal, always good to have the three of you on the program. I really appreciate you guys rolling with the breaking news as we're all learning it on the fly. Very flexible. Love the three of you. Thank you so much.